This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.
You're watching Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Evacuation orders are widened as California's biggest wildfire rages through the state's tinder-dry landscape, laying waste to hundreds of square miles and destroying historic towns.
And the Mediterranean will be hit by ever fiercer heat waves, drought, and fires, supercharged by rising temperatures, according to a draft United Nations assessment seen exclusively by AFP that warns the region is a climate change hotspot.
The Philippine capital Manila returned to lockdown as authorities sought to slow the spread of the hyper-contagious Delta variant and ease the pressure on hospitals while trying to avoid crushing economic activity.
And Tokyo 2020's mascot, MIRAITOWA, tours the main press center, greeting and posing for photos with media from around the world.
First, evacuation orders were widened as California's biggest wildfire raged through the state's tinder-dry landscape. It laid waste to hundreds of square miles. Now, the Dixie Fire is already the sixth biggest in the state's history and was still spreading thanks to gusting winds and record low humidity. And this week, it all but wiped out the historic mining town of Greenville, a settlement of a few hundred people dating back to the mid-1800s gold rush. The Dixie Fire, just one of a welter of blazes racking the western United States, has been raging in the dry forests of Northern California since mid-July, part of a global warming climate crisis that has brought sweltering heat and an alarming drought to the region. It has now engulfed around 500 square miles. Almost a fifth of that area was added overnight Wednesday into Thursday U.S. time. The blaze is so big that it has been generating its own weather system. Almost 5,000 personnel are involved in the battle to tame the blaze, but very low humidity and a parched landscape were offering ideal conditions for the fire to rage.
Now, images of wildfire raging through the village of Athens, north of Athens. A blaze that firefighters had hoped to control regained strength after having destroyed large areas of pine forests. Now, firefighters were battling a series of raging blazes in sweltering heat on Thursday in western and eastern Greece and on the outskirts of Athens, where a fire that had been coming under control regained strength. 6 out of 13 regions, including Attica, where Athens is located, have been placed on high alert for Friday, Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis announced on Thursday evening. According to Giannis Chaporniotis, the mayor of Mantudi in Evia, the island blaze is spreading on 4 fronts, including one that is advancing out of control near a monastery that was forcefully evacuated on Wednesday. Now, the 12 monks at St. David Monastery agreed to leave after several hours of negotiations with security forces. Firefighters said Thursday morning they had to tackle 92 blazes within 24 hours.
And more fire raging in Castel di Luzio, Sicily. Emergency services are rushing to stem the blazes, which are scorching part of Italy's southern regions of Sicily and Calabria. Take a look. Firefighting planes were also deployed again overnight to tackle the forest fires in the southern region of Calabria and Sicily, where flames are threatening a nature reserve in the north. A government minister said more than 70% of fires that have swept Italy this summer are caused by human action, aided by climate change. They are the latest in hundreds of blazes that have broken out across the peninsula in recent weeks, with one in the west of the island of Sardinia, ravaging almost 20,000 hectares. The Coldireri Agricultural Organization said it would take up to 15 years to re-establish the woodlands lost by the fires, calling for more protection against the blazes.
Meanwhile, the Mediterranean will be hit by ever fiercer heat waves, drought, and fires supercharged by rising temperatures, according to a draft United Nations assessment seen exclusively by AFP that warns the region is a climate change hotspot. Now, that assessment from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, to be published next year, details the future impacts that carbon pollution will have on the region. The draft predicts that temperatures across the Mediterranean are likely to rise faster than the global average in the decades to come, threatening the region's vital agriculture, fisheries, and tourism sectors. Depending on how quickly humanity reins in its greenhouse gas emissions, some Mediterranean regions could see rain-fed crop yields increase by 64%, the draft predicts. The burnt area forests in Mediterranean Europe is projected to increase by up to 87% if Earth's average surface temperature warms 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and as much as 187% in a 3 degrees Celsius hotter water world. Now, global heating has seen the planet warm 1.1 degrees Celsius so far.
Meanwhile, near the villages devastated by historic floods in Germany last month, waste centers are struggling to sort a pile equivalent to a whole year's worth of refuse. Take a look.
Wir selber sind auch hier voll. Wir können also kaum noch etwas annehmen. Also im Grunde genommen kann man nur noch das versuchen anzunehmen am Tag. Und dann müssen wir das auch sofort, am gleichen Tag muss das auch wieder rausgefahren werden. Wir haben sehr viel Hilfe gehabt von Partnerbetrieben, ohne die wäre es gar nicht gegangen, die mit vielen, vielen LKWs und Sammelfahrzeugen runtergefahren sind. Also ich habe für den Sammelbereich 40 Mitarbeiter. Da hatten wir teilweise 170 Mitarbeiter vor Ort, also von lauter Partnern und Betrieben, die uns geholfen haben.
Now, the waste site sits about 20 kilometers from our valley, where the river burst its banks and the waters turned into a torrent. Along the roads that lead to the valley, the mud has turned to dust. Now, masses of debris still need to be sorted. At the peak of the cleanup, a lorry was arriving at the site every minute, and yet this is still just the beginning.
Now, 250,000 people are displaced from their homes after heavy monsoon rains lashed eastern India. Rescue and relief operations are still underway. Flooding and landslides are common during India's treacherous monsoon season from June to September and causes widespread devastation. This year's monsoon, which had earlier inundated the western coast, has claimed the lives of at least 250 people so far. Last month, at least 200 people died in the western state of Maharashtra after landslides sent torrents of mud onto villages. Experts say the annual downpours have been worsened by climate change.
And a magnitude 6.1 earthquake struck off Taiwan's northeast coast at 5:50 a.m. yesterday, according to the Central Weather Bureau. Now, aftershocks of magnitude 4 to 5 might occur over the next 2 weeks. The earthquake's epicenter was 70.1 kilometers east of the Yilan County Hall and occurred at a focal depth of 16.7 kilometers, according to the Bureau. Now, it said 3 aftershocks of magnitudes 4.5, 4.3, and 5.2 followed the main tremor within 6 minutes. The largest intensity generated by the main earthquake was level 4 in Yilan, while level 3 was registered in Taipei, New Taipei City, Taiwan, Taichung, and Keelung, as well as in Hsinchu, Miaoli, Nantou, Yanlin, and Hualien counties, according to the Bureau data. Yesterday's tremor was the third earthquake this year, exceeding magnitude 6, according to the CWB Seismology Center Deputy Director Wu Qianfu during a news conference, adding that the other 2 occurred on February 7 and April 18, both with a magnitude of 6.2.
In other news, a tropical storm is forecast to hit Tokyo on the last day of the Olympics, according to organizers, but did not announce any changes to competition. Now, tropical storm Miraietowa is expected to pass over the capital. Japan's weather agency warned of strong winds, high waves, and the risk of landslides and floods along the eastern coastline from Saturday afternoon to Sunday. The Olympics closing ceremony is on Sunday evening, with medal events including water polo and rhythmic gymnastics taking place at indoor venues in the city during the day. Cycling track races are also scheduled in Shizuoka, southwest of Tokyo, while the men's marathon will kick off early Sunday in the far northern city of Sapporo. On Friday, Miraietowa was around 100 kilometers north of Minamidaito Island, near the southern archipelago of Okinawa. It was moving east, packing gusts of up to 108 kilometers per hour or 67 miles per hour. Another tropical storm is hovering in the Taiwan Strait, moving towards Japan. Japan's typhoon season runs from around May to October, peaking in August and September. In 2019, Typhoon Hagibis smashed into Japan as it hosted the Rugby World Cup, killing more than 100 people.
Staying in Japan, the country marked 76 years since the world's first atomic bomb attack, with low-key ceremonies and disappointment over a refusal by Olympics organizers to hold a minute's silence. Now, survivors, relatives, and a handful of foreign dignitaries attended this year's main event in Hiroshima to remember those killed or wounded in the bombing and call for world peace. Virus concerns meant the general public were once again kept away, with the ceremony instead broadcast online. An estimated 140,000 people were killed in the bombing of Hiroshima, which was followed 3 days later by the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. On Friday, Hiroshima's mayor warned experience has taught humanity that threatening others for self-defense benefits no one. He also called for leaders to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki to achieve a deeper understanding of the bombings.
In other news, Belarusian Olympic sprinter Kristina Simanouskaya said she was happy to be in safety in Warsaw on Thursday, a day after arriving in Poland, where she took refuge after saying she feared for her life if forced to return home. She gave details of the events in the Olympic Village that led her to take refuge in Poland rather than return to her native Belarus. Take a look.
When I was in Olympic Village, some coach and some men from our team, they come to my room and they say that I should say that I have some injury and come back to home. If I will not do it, then I can get some problem in my country, and they don't know which one problem, but after this day, they also come to my room and they say that I have no chance to run 200 meters and I should to come back to home, and it's not their decision, it's they just should to do.
Belarus has been racked by political upheaval and a crackdown on dissent after disputed elections that returned strongmen Alexander Lukashenko to power last year. Chimanuzkaya was one of more than 2,000 Belarusian sports figures who signed an open letter calling for new elections and for political prisoners to be freed. But her trouble in Tokyo came after she posted on her Instagram criticizing her coaches for entering her into a race without informing her first. Before leaving Tokyo, Chimanuzkaya spent 2 nights sheltering in the Polish embassy there after calling for international help.
And this Olympic saga came as police in Ukraine said missing Belarusian activist Vitaly Shishov, whose NGO helps his compatriots flee the country, had been found hanged in a park in Kiev. Now, police said they had opened a murder probe and now they would pursue all leads, including murder disguised as suicide, while activists accuse authorities of an operation to liquidate a Belarusian who presented a true danger to the regime. Belarus strongman Alexander Lukashenko, who has been in power since 1994, has been cracking down on any form of dissent since mass protests erupted after last year's elections, deemed unfair by the West. Many Belarusians have fled, often to neighboring Ukraine, Poland, and Lithuania. The United Nations and Washington called on the Ukrainian authorities to conduct a thorough investigation.
Meanwhile, the 2 Belarusian coaches who were involved in the effort to force a sprinter to return to Minsk, Kristina Simanuzkaya, was critical of being put in a race she had not trained for. 2 Belarusian coaches have been stripped of their Tokyo Olympics accreditations over an alleged attempt to force the sprinter to fly home, an incident that drew international condemnation. The International Olympic Committee on Friday said it had removed the accreditations of Artur Shimak and Yuri Maisevich, and they had left the Olympic Village. The body said this week that it was investigating the pair over their role in the case of Kristina Simanuzkaya, who sought protection at a Tokyo airport to avoid being put on a plane home. She said she feared for her life if forced back to Belarus.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mamang sorbetero, tayo sumayaw, kalimbang mong hawak, muling ikaw ay batang munti sa'yo'y naghihintay, biglang ligaya ngayong tagkaraw. Mamang sorbetero, tayo sumayaw, kalimbang mong hawak, muling ikaw ay mainit na labi, nagbabagang mata, sunog na pag-ibig, parang hawa mo na. Mamang sorbetero, anong ngalan mo? Tinda mong ice cream, gustong-gusto ko. Init ng buhay, pinapawi mo. Sama ng loob, nalilimutan ko. La 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 la
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. The Philippine capital Manila returned to lockdown today as authorities sought to slow the spread of the hyper-contagious Delta variant and ease the pressure on hospitals while trying to avoid crushing economic activity. Let's listen in.
GCQ with heightened and additional restriction nung nakarang araw hanggang kahapon, tayo po ay nasa NCR plus bubble. Meaning to say, walang pwede makalabas, walang pwede makapasok sa bubble area na yun, except na lang kung worker upper sila. At yun po ating ini-implement. But starting this morning, actually kagabi po yan, ito po mga cities natin, the 16 city and 1 municipality here in Metro Manila, na-convert po yan sa mga maliliit na bubble. Lahat sila po ay bubble kung saan nagkaroon na tayo ng mga checkpoint doon sa intercity boundaries.
Mahirap talaga sa buhay. Yan, katulad niyan. Katulad itong araw na to, yan, tumal, may tira. Tapos ganyan pa sir, ang hirap sa kalsada, traffic. Tapos, kailangan mo pa talaga mag-face shield, ang hirap.
Now, experts have warned that an explosion in Delta cases could overwhelm the health system if restrictions were not tightened in the crowded capital, which accounts for about a third of the country's economy. Now, the stay-at-home order announced last week was expanded on Thursday to include neighboring Laguna province. Restrictions were also tightened in other regions where coronavirus infections have spiked. The Philippines has detected more than 330 Delta cases in recent weeks, and there are fears the strain could tear through the nation as it has in neighboring countries.
South Korea will extend its tough social distancing restrictions for 2 more weeks, according to Prime Minister Kim Boo-kim on Friday as the country struggles to contain the spread of COVID-19. The measure to ban private gatherings of more than 2 people after 6 p.m., including in restaurants, will remain in place in Seoul, Gyeonggi Province, and the western port city of Incheon through August 22, according to Kim. South Korea, with a population of 52 million, has been reporting 4-digit daily counts of newly confirmed cases for a month. The highest of the nation's 4-tier coronavirus prevention system, effective in the Seoul metropolitan area, was slated to expire this weekend. The other parts of the country have been under level 3 guidelines. Kim said it was not easy for the government to make the decision to extend the level 4 social distancing system in the capital area, as small businesses have long suffered difficulties. He expressed concern about the possibility of another spike in infections linked with the August 15 Liberation Day holiday and emphasized the need to create safe conditions for students to return to school following their summer vacation.
Meanwhile, 3 employees at CNN have been fired for violating the network's coronavirus policy by coming into the office unvaccinated, according to U.S. media reports. Let me be clear, we have a zero-tolerance policy on this, according to CNN President Jeff Zucker in snippets of the memo tweeted by CNN media reporter Oliver Darcy. His memo did not specify the fired employees' names, positions, or office locations. CNN didn't immediately reply to a request for a comment. Inoculations are mandatory for anyone reporting in the field, working with any other employees, or entering the offices, he reportedly said in the memo as well. In May, the United States federal government said it was legal for employers to require staff physically entering the workplace to be vaccinated against COVID-19.
To Australia now, where the hope of returning to COVID-0 suffered a fresh blow, as Sydney reported another record number of new infections, and authorities warned residents to brace for worse to come. For a second straight day, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian said Australia's most populous state hit a new peak with 291 cases detected. Take a look.
We're likely to see this trend continue for the next few days. So I do want everybody to prepare themselves for higher case numbers in the next few days. Just based on the trend in the last few days and where things are going, I'm expecting higher case numbers in the next few days, and I just want everybody to be prepared for that.
Roughly 60% of Australia's 25 million residents are currently in lockdown as the country tries to curb the spread of a virulent Delta variant outbreak. Melbourne became the latest major city to shutter late Thursday after Victoria State Premier Dan Andrews issued stay-at-home orders for the sixth time in this pandemic. Barely 20% of Australians have been fully vaccinated due to an acute lack of supply and pockets of vaccine hesitancy. With cases rising and lockdown seemingly able to slow but not stop the spread, there are growing questions about whether Australia can return to the zero or COVID zero status it enjoyed for much of the last 18 months.
And as CJ has mentioned, Melbourne has gone into a sixth coronavirus lockdown as Australia falters in its efforts to bring the Delta outbreak under control. Let's take a look.
Look, I don't think any of us like it, but I feel that it's necessary. Yeah, so, you know, we just do what we have to do.
I mean, I'm not saying we're doing super well, but we're keeping our heads above water. We've just got to all do the right thing, not get upset with people.
Start to move off, otherwise you'll be arrested.
In other news, President Joe Biden announced Thursday that Hong Kong citizens currently in the United States who fear for their safety amid the political crackdown back home will receive temporary safe haven. Biden said the move recognizes the significant erosion of rights and freedoms in Hong Kong by the Chinese government. In a statement, President Biden cited the politically motivated arrests of more than 100 opposition politicians, activists, and protesters on charges under the national security law, including allegations of secession, subversion, and terrorist activities. More than 10,000 others have been arrested in relation to anti-government protests, according to him. Now, the new decision extends deferred enforced departure, or DED, to Hong Kong residents currently in the United States, allowing them to remain for 18 months, even if their visas have expired.
The United Nations said it urgently needed funds to feed people in Myanmar amid fears that up to 6.2 million could be plunged into hunger by October. The UN's World Food Program said it was 70% short of the $86 million needed over the next 6 months as the country goes through multiple crises. A major wave of COVID-19 infections is surging through Myanmar, compounding hunger, rising food and fuel prices, political unrest, violence, and displacement, according to the World Food Program. World Food Program's Myanmar Country Director Stephen Anderson said nearly 90% of households living in slum-like settlements around Yangon say they have to borrow money to buy food. Incomes have been badly affected for many. Myanmar has been in chaos and its economy paralyzed since the military seized power from civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1st.
The Taliban shot dead the head of the Afghan government's Media Information Center on Friday at a mosque in the capital, according to the ministry. This was days after warning they would target senior administration officials in retaliation for increased airstrikes. Unfortunately, the savage terrorists have committed a cowardly act once again and martyred a patriotic Afghan. That, according to Interior Ministry spokesman MIRAITOWA, in the death of Dawa Khan Menapal. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the death, with spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid sending a message to media saying he was killed in a special attack carried out by Mujahideen. Now the Taliban already control large portions of the countryside and are now challenging Afghan government forces in several large cities. The militants warned Wednesday of more attacks targeting Afghan government leaders a day after the defense minister escaped an assassination attempt. Fighting in Afghanistan's long-running conflict has intensified since May, when foreign forces began the final stage of a withdrawal due to be completed later this month.
And the Israeli Air Force said it carried out its first airstrikes on neighboring Lebanon in 7 years, following a second day of rocket fire across the border. Lebanon condemned the strikes as an escalation that could mark a change of tactics by Israel, while UN peacekeepers urged restraint. In a tweet, the Israeli Air Force said rockets were fired from Lebanon into Israeli territory. And in response, fighter jets struck the launch sites and infrastructure used for terror in Lebanon, from which the rockets were launched. Israeli aircraft routinely strike Palestinian militant targets in Gaza and suspected Hezbollah or Iranian targets in Syria. But the Air Force confirmed it was the first time since 2014 that they had hit targets in Lebanon. Lebanese President Michel Aoun said Israel's use of its Air Force to target Lebanese villages suggests an intention to escalate attacks against Lebanon.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Protect yourself and loved ones. Use Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant that kills 500 strains of bacteria, fungi, and viruses such as coronavirus and other disease-causing microorganisms. Also potent against viruses in pets. It kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes. Dissolve 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water. Apply on areas for disinfection or use it for misting. Protect Plus Gold.
Gusto kong malaman mo na nahuhulog na ako sa'yo. Sana tayo na lang, tayo na lang, tayo na lang. Gusto kong malaman.
Hello guys, my name is Adrian. I'm Easy. Please catch us on Letters and Music, on air and online.
This coming Sunday, August 8, 1 to 2 p.m.
So guys, please tune in on that. See ya.
Yeah, yeah.
Ulo.
Sa ilalim ng dagat ay sisisig. Ang tahong ay hahangin. At ang kita ay palalaguin.
Para ka kumita, sisipagan mo, tapos konting kapitalo, magpopondo ka para meron kang hanguin, no? Meron kang makuha pagdating ng oras. Mga 6 months, 3 months, pabalik na yung puhunan mo.
Kesa sa itapon, no? Kailangan natin siyang i-recycle para mapakinabangan.
Iba't ibang sangkap ay lutuin o tahing di kayang limutin. Ako po si Robin Padilla at ito po ang vlog, Kaagapay sa Hanap Buhay.
And welcome back. Major supermarket chains in Britain are offering cash bonuses for lorry drivers there. To tell us more about it, here's Bel Celestino, Aribel Celestino reporting from the United Kingdom. Hello, Aribel.
Hi, Alma. And yes, major supermarket chains in Britain are offering cash bonuses for lorry drivers as Brexit and the coronavirus pandemic leaves tens of thousands of jobs unfilled and shop shelves increasingly empty. Industry warnings of crisis affecting supplies of everything from milk to sweets and tonic water have intensified, along with the demands for the government to act fast or risk disruption leading up to December. It's a perfect storm. Rob Holliman, director of the haulage company Northwest Cargo, told the AFP in an interview. His company owns 160 trucks, but is struggling to fill up to 30 vacancies for drivers across industry depots in the Northwest England. Nationwide, according to the Road Haulage Association, or RHA, the shortfalls runs to 100,000 lorry drivers out of a total of trucking workforce of 300,000. Like many other UK hauliers, Alma, Northwest Cargo used to fill its cabs with drivers from Eastern Europe, but due to the Brexit from the European Union and the introduction of the onerous new visa rules triggered an exodus. And meanwhile, an estimated 20,000 trainee British drivers are stuck in the pipeline with the coronavirus pandemic, causing a month-long backlog for license tests. And like the other UK industries, road haulage is suffering a pandemic caused by many drivers being told by the government app to self-isolate after coming into contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. It's a big issue. There is a limited number of drivers in this country, and all that is happening is that resource is being pulled in one direction, he said, referring to supermarket chains like Tesco. Britain's biggest grocer has announced starting bonuses of £1,000, which equals to $1,390 and €1,175 to lure new recruits to operate its heavy goods vehicles, HGVs. The John Lewis Partnership, which runs the Waitrose chain of supermarkets, said it will raise its HGV drivers' salaries by up to $5,000 to ensure it can offer market competitive rates. We're going to have interruptions on the shelves. We're resigned to that. Shane Brennan, Chief Executive of the Cold Chain Federation Logistics Association, said in the Guardian newspaper. And also the Arla Foods UK, the UK's biggest dairy supplier, was unable to deliver milk to 600 out of 2,400 stores in late July due to the dwindling driver numbers. We are trying to avoid a summer disruption, managing director Ash Amiramadi told BBC Radio, urging the government to work with the industry to recognize we are in a crisis and to address the issue. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Aribel, for your update. Okay, I lost Aribel there. There you go. Okay, Aribel, you stay safe. Safe weekend ahead.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Aribel Celestino, and we live in interesting times.
In other news, U.S. President Joe Biden signs an executive order setting a goal of half of all new passenger vehicles sold in the United States to be zero emission by 2030. Take a look.
Blue-collar blueprint. As I've said before, we're in competition with China and many other nations for the 21st century. To win, we're going to have to make sure the future will be made in America. There's a vision of the future that is now beginning to happen. A future of the automobile industry that is electric. Battery electric, plug-in hybrid electric, fuel cell electric. It's electric, and there's no turning back. The question is whether we'll lead or fall behind in the race for the future. And a key part of the electric vehicle, to state the obvious, is the battery. And right now, 80% of the manufacturing capacity for these batteries is done in China. And here's the deal. It's not China's battery technology that's much more innovative than anyone else's. Remember, our national labs in America, our universities, our automakers led in the development of this technology. And there's no reason why we can't reclaim that leadership.
Biden cast the move as a way to compete with China and other countries that have invested in electric vehicles or EVs, while also transforming the U.S. transportation sector, which is the biggest source of the country's carbon emissions. The target is Biden's latest repudiation of the policies of his predecessor, Donald Trump, and he also intends to beef up fuel economy rules and emissions regulations the former president rolled back.
Now, Malaysian police have hit on a novel way to dispose of more than 1,000 Bitcoin mining machines seized in raids, crushing the devices using a steamroller. Authorities on Borneo Island discovered the machines worth an estimated 5.3 million ringgit or $1.25 million in crackdowns between February and April and say they were powered using stolen electricity. Take a look.
Now, inside an unassuming store in New York's Greenwich Village, around a dozen men unlock black briefcases, remove sports cards, and begin to trade them. A growing hobby and industry that has boomed during the pandemic. Take a look.
I told I was going to go for a birthday.
Yeah, I feel like it's... I would anticipate the value of this card to be about $80,000 after today's news. Earlier today. You
guys follow him? Card ladder?
Because you never know what people check.
This. We've seen basically month after month record-breaking sales, including one today. A card sold for $5.9 million, which is just absurd.
Sharon, did we bring anything else that's really big? Sharon, did we bring any other?
I love watching a kid play sports and then their card is like stocks. It's like live stocks, basically. There's no other collecting that will give you that. That excitement that you watch a kid and watch him grow and watch your stock grow.
No way. They were just told he was going to be in a car with me.
And Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Ako po si Ronnie, isa po ako sa nawalan ng trabaho ngayong pandemya. Sobrang hirap, ma'am, lalo na nagkaroon ng pandemic. Hindi mo alam kung saan ka pupunta o saan ka kukuha ng kakainin mo. Ayan po, yan, dito rin kami dati nakatira. Nagkaroon ng pandemic, lumipat po sa kabila. O ibang tao nga nahihirapan, may trabaho. Ako pa kaya... Ito po yung bahay ko na pinaglipatan ko mula Pidukos hanggang dito. Nagkaroon po siya ng ECQ, ma'am. Hanggang sa nahirapan na kami, nawalan na kami ng hanap buhay. Simpleng tao lang naman ako eh. Bata pa ako, ba't bibigyan mo akong ganitong trabaho? Bigyan mo akong karanasan ng ganitong buhay.
Welcome back. Brittany Griner scored a game-high 15 points and grabbed 12 rebounds as the U.S. saw off Serbia 79-59 to make the women's Olympic basketball final Friday and move a step closer to the 7th consecutive title. The Americans were 41-23 ahead at halfway and kept firm control to set up a gold medal clash against either host Japan or 2012 silver medalist France, who play later. Chelsea Gray added 14 points and Brianna Stewart 12 for the U.S., while Yvonne Anderson scored 15 points to lead Serbia. The victory at Saitama Super Arena on Friday was the Americans' 54th in a row at the Olympics, an amazing streak that began with the 1992 bronze medal decider and includes a record 6 straight gold medals and 5 wins in Tokyo.
Meanwhile, Poland's David Tomala won the men's Olympic 50 kilometers race walk today, defying the punishing morning heat in Sapporo to storm to victory in just the second event he has completed over the distance. Now, the 31-year-old crossed the line in 3 hours, 50 minutes and 8 seconds, matching the achievement of compatriot Robert Korzeniowski, who won the event 3 times. Germany's Jonathan Hilbert finished second, 36 seconds adrift, while Canada's Ivan Dunphy matched his bronze at the 2019 World Championships in Doha, crossing the line in 3:50:59. The event is being dropped for the Paris 2024 Games in favor of a new mixed gender event.
And Cuba's Julio La Cruz, who was shot during a robbery just a few years ago, won his second Olympic gold today with victory in the heavyweight boxing final. The 31-year-old defeated Russia's Muslim Gadji Magomedov on unanimous points to add to the Tokyo title to his Rio 2016 lightweight crown. La Cruz, a 4-time world champion at light heavyweight, was held up by armed robbers back in 2014 in Cuba and shot in the hip. Now 31, he put the trauma farther behind him by adding Tokyo Olympic gold when he defeated Russia's Muslim Gadji Magomedov on unanimous points. Now, the elusive and wily La Cruz, who is nicknamed the Shadow, collapsed flat on his back in the ring when his victory was announced against his Russian opponent. With 2 more days of boxing left in Tokyo, Cuba have won 3 golds in the sport. The Russians won and Japan won. 8 more titles remain to be decided.
Very difficult names there, but now on to one character probably most recognizable in Tokyo 2020. The mascot MIRAITOWA tours the main press center, greeting and posing for photos with media from around the world. Take a look.
Doesn't stick.
Ah, don't stick.
Don't stick.
Hágalo, pegar, ¿verdad? Sigo haciendo.
I want to have that doll.
Me too. I want him alive, though. I want him moving like that. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. The news will be back tomorrow.
Yes, we'll see you back tomorrow. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.